There we go. So just to begin, I just wanted to look at some statements about the importance of the family and the role of parents and faith formation at home. And I thought these statements were very poignant. That we know that parents, have the first responsibility for education of their children. And that parents have this mission of teaching their children to pray and to discover their vocation as children of God. So really, part of my kind of burden, I feel this real burden for the parents, especially since COVID, but to help them in this role of teaching their children and forming their children and feeling confident in that. We see here too that the home must continue to be the place where we learn to appreciate the beauty and meaning of the faith, to pray and to serve our neighbor. Home really should be that place where children learn about their faith, that they learn how to pray, that they feel comfortable talking about their faith. And sometimes that's not the case, but hopefully, in our settings, we can encourage parents to kind of build that space at home. So we know that parents catechize by the way they live, whether they know it or not. The way that they live is teaching their children something. And we hope that it's teaching them about faith and about the Lord. That parents' teaching is deeply rooted in their love for their children. So of course, all of what they share, is rooted in love. All of what I have shared with my two boys, I have two boys, ages 24 and 23. And of course, all that I have, taught them is because of that I love them and I want them to know the Lord. And parents catechize through teachable moments and family events. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we kind of get into this. But parents really can catechize in so many moments in everyday life. So as I was thinking about this, I love this passage from Deuteronomy that says, therefore, you shall love the Lord your God with your whole heart and with your whole being and your whole strength. And we've heard that before, of course. But it goes on to say, take to heart these words, which I command you today. Keep repeating them to your children. Recite them when you are at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them on your arm as a sign and let them be as a pendant on your forehead. Write them on the doorposts of your houses and on your gates. I thought that is so powerful, that if we as parents, or that we help parents see, that they're called to love God and to serve God, and to take those words to heart and then to just constantly repeat them to their children, whether they're doing that in word or in deed, and to recite them and to bind them on their arms so that that's the message their children are getting in all things that they do and all things that they say. So, we know that family faith is formed in everyday life. Parents and their children journey together in faith, and, they weave faith shaping practices intentionally and seamlessly into the rhythms of daily life. And that is so important. So we'll talk more about that. I love this quote from Tish Warren, who is an Anglican priest, actually. She is, probably this, but she has a column in the New York Times. And I get her the emails every week. She writes beautifully, but I love this quote where she says, I often want to skip the boring daily stuff to get to the thrill of an edgy faith, which I think I'm kind of like that too. But it's in the dailiness of the Christian faith, the making of the bed, the doing the dishes, the praying for our enemies, the reading the Bible, the quiet, the small, that God's transformation takes root and grows. So just a reminder that it's in the dailiness of our faith, the dailiness of living in everyday activity, that God's transformation can take root, that faith can take root, that God's love can take root. And that the family is, we know the family is a community of life and love, and family life is sacred. And I think that we have to help families know that and believe it. Because all of their activities are holy, and God's love is communicated through all of those things and revealed in it, in how they treat each other, how they just go about daily life and sharing meals and getting to school and being in Little League and going to football games, all of those things. that we have to help them see that God dwells among them. And we have to empower them to recognize and respond to God's grace and movement in their lives, and to see God in all of those little moments. So why family faith formation? I know probably in the first session, I know you guys talked about this a lot, but I think all of these topics today kind of overlap. But that family faith formation, and here at Presentation, we have a family model. We have about 478 families in our program, and they come once a month, just so you have a little bit of an overview. And the children, once a month for a family program. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what we do. And the children do online lessons. We have an online curriculum. So they have weekly lessons at home that we hope and encourage the parents to do with them. And then they have ongoing activities that they hopefully do at home, as families together. So that's the way our program looks. But why do this? Why a family faith, program? Because faith, we know, is best taught and lived out in the family, that children are more likely to put into practice the faith that they've experienced and lived out day to day in their home. Oops, I have a typo there. And when they see their parents model it. We know that parents are called to be the first and foremost educators of their children, and that parents and family are the most important religious influence on the religious and spiritual outcomes of young people. And I even think about my own parents, who are 87 and 91. My father's 91, and how they formed the seven of us. I really learned my faith from their example, from not so much about what they shared, because they didn't really share a lot about their personal faith, but about how they lived and how they taught us to pray and how they brought us to church. They had a tremendous influence on my faith life, and why I decided to go into ministry. So parents are just so influential. We also know that the early years of a child's development offers receptivity and vulnerability to good formation, which really only happens in the family, right? That faith practices are nurtured there. Family faith helps families embrace this time young, in their child's life, and use it to form their children well. We have found that parents often relearn or are learning for the first time their faith in an easy and non-threatening way. We know, and I see a lot, that I think our parents need to be re-catechized, re-educated. And so often they come to us and say, oh, I never learned that, or, oh, I never knew that. So they're learning very simple lessons, whether it's about scripture or prayer, their faith, about mass, learning alongside their children, which is really a beautiful thing. And that families grow to understand what it means to be the domestic church, through this process. Hopefully within this type of a program, we can help them understand what it means to be the domestic church, and that we can connect that church of the home to the church of the community, which is our parish. So through family faith formation, I think if we do it well, we can help families learn these faith practices for the home. We can help them learn how to read the Bible as a family, and how to talk about it, and how not to be scared about it or nervous. We can help them pray together as a family, and encourage young people to pray personally and individually as well. We can help them to understand serving people in need as a family, and encouraging children to serve as individuals. I know my parents really modeled that for us as well, donating food to the soup kitchens and the food pantries, and going to serve as a family, was something that really made an impression on me, seeing my parents do that together and with us. Just eating together as a family too is so important. And hopefully we can help them to learn how important sharing that meal is, and connecting it to, the meal we share as a faith family here at Mass. We can hopefully help them have family conversations about faith and religious issues, and talking about questions and doubts, having that God talk that I think sometimes families are afraid to have. But I think in a family program and allowing them those conversations here and to ask questions, we can encourage them to do that at home as well. We hope that through a family model, we help them ritualize family moments and milestones, things like celebrating baptism days. I celebrate my boys' baptism days, which are January 9th and August 15th. And we simply light their baptismal candles, which I still have. We say a prayer, and then we have cake. It's really just another reason to have dessert. No, but we just celebrate it kind of like a birthday, but do light their baptismal candles and use that symbol. And it's a fun thing that we do, and they look forward to it, even though they're young adults now. But ritualizing those important family moments, and not just religious ones, but things like getting a driver's license or graduation or the first day of school, those kinds of things. Hopefully we help them learn how to celebrate holidays and holy days and church seasons at home, and encourage them to create prayer spaces, and have visual things in their homes like an Advent wreath, things like that to help them recognize the season. I know as a kid in Lent, we always had the rice bowls on our table, and that was still is a real symbol for me of what Lent is about, and almsgiving. And also, hopefully, we can help them learn about moral instruction and how they can help their children and form them morally. And then encourage them to be involved in a faith community and participate in regular Sunday worship as a family. So some important and effective practices, I think, just starting out with really affirming parents and families. Our pastor here, Father Bob, is so good at that. He constantly impresses me in the way that he affirms families when they come into Mass, and even if they come in late or they come into our programs, and you see it, and the kids come in their soccer uniforms and they're rushing in, and he constantly is affirming them, saying, I see you, I appreciate that you're here. It's okay that you're late. We're just grateful to see you. And we love you. And he says that regularly to them. And I think that's so important. Also to just encouraging them, to see the beauty in their call to be parents, their call to be the domestic church, and to remind them of their holiness as a family. I think we can strengthen families as they form faith at home by focusing on 3 different areas. Family faith forming at home, family activities at church, and opportunities for faith formation for parents and grandparents. We'll talk a little bit more about that too, but that's something we've been trying to focus on here a lot, is forming our parents, and offering them opportunities just for not just faith learning, but helping them in their role as parents, and having extra speakers come in to help them raise their children and help their children through difficult times. And the third thing is, helping families to feel comfortable with day-to-day practices at home. These are most important as they impart faith to their children, learning how to read the Bible, not being intimidated by the scriptures, praying as a family, simply saying grace or praying at night, modeling prayer, doing acts of Christian service together, sharing meals, talking about the faith and asking questions, ritualizing important moments, we already said, and attending Sunday worship with the community and celebrating the Sabbath. I think last year we did a session just with our parents on the importance of celebrating the Sabbath. And it was very eye-opening actually to them. But we just talked about that, the importance of having a day of rest and having a day centered on church, your church family and your family at home. And I talked about just how I remember how Sundays with us were a very important family day. And we would go to Mass together, we would get bagels, have a big breakfast, we would watch Abbott and Costello, which I have just great memories of with my siblings, and then spend the day playing tennis or going swimming or taking a hike with my dad or whatever. But and then having dinner with my grandparents, which was but it was a beautiful day. And we weren't even allowed to do homework. It was a day we were supposed to kind of be with family. So, but celebrating the Sabbath is so important. And I think it's something we've gotten away from. So we've been trying to encourage our families in that. And even if it's a Sabbath morning, or a Sabbath afternoon, just encouraging them to take that time together as a family. So some effective models and approaches. And I think you maybe talked about some of this morning too, but the intergenerational model, having gatherings that are for different ages and the whole family learning together. Grandparents can engage with the families as well. And in our model, we often have the grandparents come and bring their grandchildren, or they come, with the parents as well. And sometimes we will break off into specific age groups. Sometimes we have learning activities with the family all together, and then, send them follow-up materials for home. But that intergenerational model is a really beautiful thing. There's also this liturgical or lectionary based model, offering lessons that correlate to the lectionary and helping families prepare for the Sunday liturgies and holy days at home. One of the things we have on our website is, we call it the Bible reader, but the children we've actually had children record all of the Sunday gospel readings. So the families can listen to the gospel reading, the children can listen to it alone or with their parents, and then hopefully talk about it before they come to Mass, so that when they come to Mass, they're ready to really receive the word, and then talk about it a little bit more on the way home. So, and then this family model, family-based learning at the parish and at home. And again, can include age-specific lessons or family-based lessons. All of this can include in-person and online learning. Certainly during the pandemic, we would record lessons and post them for families, and then have them do a questionnaire or do an activity where they could answer things in a form and send it to us, or had an interactive form. And even on our website for our children, they have a feature where they can post what they've learned, and then they can all see each other's comments, which is really helpful as well. So, and a lot of this can be done, again, it's, we kind of have a hybrid model, but it can be done, synchronously and asynchronously. So there's lots of different ways you can do this. But I think all of these models and approaches should include things like recognizing and encouraging parents in their role as the primary educators of their faith. That we are not their teachers, we are not the experts, that parents really have that role, and we want to just equip them and encourage them in that as much as possible, and help them just to understand, kind of the language in which to teach their children. So it also should include, Sunday liturgy, good Sunday liturgy and worship opportunities, good technology and delivery of content, the use of good online resources, storytelling and faith sharing, home learning, community outreach and service, and opportunities to share and reflect. So some effective strategies, and some of these we use here at our parish, is, using the church year and the feasts and seasons as your curriculum. So celebrating these events with families and giving them resources then to take home or have them online, so that they can continue to learn at home together and to apply that learning. So things like, blessing families on the Feast of the Holy Family, celebrating St. Nicholas on his feast day. We had someone dress as St. Nicholas and be here on the feast day of St. Nick. And we had him come out at the end of Mass. Father Bob introduced him and talked about St. Nicholas and who he was and what he did. And then St. Nicholas was in the narthex to greet the children and to give them little prayer cards. But that was just a wonderful way to keep them focused on St. Nicholas, a little more than Santa Claus. Our parish feast day is the Feast of the Presentation. So we often use that day as a day for education and formation. And when it has fallen on a Sunday, we will have learning materials and prayer cards and things out in the narthex for the families to take. So I think that's a beautiful thing to do. We have an Our Lady of Guadalupe Mass where we have a mariachi band kind of come in and do the music and celebrate Our Lady of Guadalupe. And things like and I put this up in the resources for you, but a Lenten toolbox, which is really, it's just a document about Lent and about the different themes during Lent. And then it has all sorts of resources and links to things like music, podcasts, different readings, articles, videos for parents to help teach their children about Lent and the meaning of Lent. It's also really good for anybody, but it's really good for families. Another effective strategy, building family faith practices, again, to kind of teach it with them at church, in our family sessions or in your family session, so they can then do it at home together. Things like, we had a lesson a few months ago on David and Goliath, really. And we talked about David and how he conquered Goliath, but really asked the children to think about what they're afraid of and how they could conquer fear. And we talked about how David had three things: how he had tools, that God had given him, like his slingshot. And he knew how to, fight animals and things from his time as a shepherd. That he had training, he was already trained kind of by being a shepherd, but also trained in, in the army. And then he had trust, he had trust in God. So we talked about those 3 T's. And then we had a big Goliath painted. One of our staff people was an artist, and she painted a 9-foot Goliath that we had. And we asked the children to write things that they were afraid of on sticky notes and put them on Goliath. And it was very eye-opening, actually, the things that they were afraid of. It wasn't just like spiders or snakes, but they were afraid of teachers or children, other children in their school, or they were afraid of being alone, or afraid of losing their mom and dad, afraid of gun violence. Like, it was very, very touching. But we talked about how God could help us conquer those fears. And we put a big banner over all those things that just said God. And then at the end of the lesson, we had the children, we actually got slingshots on Amazon with foam balls, and we had the kids use the slingshot to kill Goliath. And I actually had one girl in my lesson who hit Goliath right between the middle of the eyes, and it was awesome. And everyone cheered for her. But that was a great way to help the families learn how to kind of break apart a scripture story, and learn from it and talk about it. So, and then we gave them, again, some materials and questions to use at home so they could break apart other stories. But that was one of our most favorite lessons, one of my most favorite lessons. So we have also done a session on learning how to pray with the scripture, and where we really led them through a process of Lectio Divina and reflecting on the scripture, and having the families together reflect on a passage and write words down that meant something to them, or an image down that meant something to them. And that was really powerful as well, to hear what they heard, through those scripture passages. Again, practicing the Sabbath, I already talked about that. And then a service experience. We recently had a service experience with Holy Name Hospital in Teaneck, and they have a ministry for Haiti that packages up meals for the poor in Haiti. And they literally came in and turned our auditorium into this massive operation where we had, I think, 300 people. We did it twice, and we had 300 people each session. And it was just this beautiful operation where we were packing up in bags things like beans, protein powder, rice, and other dried vegetables, and then sealing them in these pouches that would get shipped to Haiti. So then when these children and families, cooked it with water, it would provide, I think, meals. It was like 3 meals in one of those pouches. So, and we packaged up, I think, 60,000 meals. But it was an incredible experience for the families to do together, and the children loved it. And they did a great education piece on Haiti and on poverty, and we got a little bit of Catholic social teaching in there. So it was just a great service service experience that they were able to do together as a family, and then talk about it at home. And then we encourage them, of course, to get involved in other, service activities and serving the poor, feeding the poor in our soup kitchen ministries or other food pantries in the area. But that was just a wonderful way to families to begin to experience, service projects like that. So other effective strategies, celebrating milestones, we mentioned that, but we do, I'm sure a lot of you do, the blessing of the backpacks, where we ask the kids to bring in their backpacks on the first weekend of school. And we call them up and we bless them all. And then we made a little tag that they could take with a scripture verse on it and a nice little saying. And they all put them on their backpacks, which was so cute. A blessing of the keys for kids who just got their driver's license, a senior blessing and send off. We do that often here at Presentation. But in doing these things, we name those sacred moments, and then I think equip and encourage families to celebrate them at home. We bless them, we give them gifts and visible reminders of these moments. And then we can kind of revisit those learnings, at upcoming gatherings. So celebrating milestones is just so important and beautiful, I think. And I think when we do it here, we encourage families to do it at home. Again, focusing on Sunday liturgies and the lectionary. I think, offering discussion questions in the bulletin or online for families to talk about when they get home, like a question of the week or questions for the ride home, just encourages that discussion and that God talk, and just encourages them to not be afraid, to read the Bible and to talk about it. I often share this story. My mom, one time when I was a teenager, asked me why I liked reading the Bible so much. And I said, I don't know, I really love to learn about Jesus. And I said, why don't you read the Bible? And she goes, you don't read the Bible, you just look at it. And it was just such a funny thing to me, because I know in their generation, they had these big Bibles and they were like coffee table books. And, in their generation, they didn't read it. The priest read it to them, I suppose. And so to her, literally opening the scripture and reading it was very foreign. And she wasn't comfortable with that, but I was. And so that was a big discussion, she and I have had over the years, actually. But becoming comfortable with scripture is an important thing. And then, forming parents is so important. Having parent sessions for various stages in life on different topics, having parent retreats. We've had retreats here we call Celebrate the Dance for married couples. But we also have mini retreats just for women, mini retreats just for men. I bring in speakers from the parish. Actually, they're not, these are people who are parishioners, who are psychiatrists and therapists, and they've come in and done workshops for the parents on helping teens with anxiety, depression, talking with teens about spirituality, and all kinds of things like that. And they also will give the parents resources, PowerPoints, handouts to go home with and use with their kids. We started running a parallel program for parents when the high schoolers are here for youth ministry, because I noticed that the parents were staying. A lot of them were staying because in our parish, we kind of draw from a wide variety of, from like 150 different towns. So parents often drive a ways and they'll stay and hang out in the hallways. So I just started having wine and cheese sometimes and snacks, and have a speaker come in, and they love that. Or just having a time for the parents to sit around and share has been really, really helpful and useful for them. So, but again, I don't go outside, the parish community necessarily. I have just looked in our parish database and found parishioners who can help do these things. And that's been really great. So what's working kind of in our setting here is, again, we have kind of a hybrid model to help families, do family faith formation at home. So we have an online curriculum where the children do their weekly lessons with their parents at home. We hope that they're learning together and spending time together. Obviously, not every family does that, but that's the goal. Our children's website also has resources on the site in a different section about saints, about music. They can play different songs we sing here at the parish. There's prayers, like every prayer you can imagine. And then there's what we call act out activities that they can do at home. All kinds of things from, making pretzels to making saints banners about the saints that we'll hang up in the church, all kinds of things. So you can easily curate a lot of materials. John talks about that a lot, and create your own website, and put these resources up for them. We have our monthly gatherings. So as I said, we bring families together to learn here and to learn from each other. And then hopefully learning these practices that then they can do at home. And the families, we have found that keeping the families together and then having them at a table with another family, learning these activities and learning these practices works the best and is the most encouraging to them. And then our online resources like this Lenten toolbox, or we have a presentation at home website where there's lots of different resources linked as well that families can use. This is just a sample. Like I said, I think John linked up our toolbox for you, but this is just one page of it. I did a screenshot. But you'll see that there's videos, there's articles, there's different resources, there's craft ideas, Stations of the Cross that they can watch or read and pray together, drawing Stations of the Cross, there's art activities. So these are things we just, pull together and offer the families, and hopefully helps engage them at home. And many times we will, again, have them bring things in or email it to us, and then we will put them up on the website so other families can see what they're all doing. Or like when they did a Saints banner, we had them bring it in and we hung them up all over the parish center, which was just a really, really beautiful thing to see what they had each learned about different saints. So we also, I was saying earlier, sometimes with our monthly gatherings, we do things like this week, actually, we're doing a play about Joseph, kind of a take on Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat. But it's about a 45-minute play that the children are in, and we have a few adults and high school kids in it as well. But it's an amazing evangelization tool to have a play like that, where we have grandparents coming and extended family coming from out of town and neighbors coming who aren't Catholic. But it's amazing, and the kids who are in the play, of course, are learning a tremendous amount. But all the families that come to watch are learning, that Bible story through music, and through just a really fun play that we do in the church with a very simple set, and costumes and music. So that's kind of a special thing we do maybe once or twice a year if we can pull it off. But it's a lot of fun, and it draws in a lot of people. So, and we open it up to the whole parish. So it's something the whole parish gets to experience, which is also a beautiful thing. Our family masses, we have once a month. We have children serve as lectors and greeters and in the choir. Father Bob always calls our altar the best table in town, which I kind of love that. And then we try to help the families make that connection between the mass and how, this is the best table in town. But I always say, but your table at home is the second best table in town, and help make those connections between sharing that family meal at home and sharing that meal here, at Mass. Again, parent-only sessions, use the people in your parish. These parent sessions are so crucial, I think, to give you time to listen to their needs, and then to respond to those needs, and to give them things they can use at home, with their children. And then again, service opportunities, like we had this Haiti Packathon, which was great. But also we do things here where we have collections. It's a group called TerraCycle. And we have families bring in things like toothpaste tubes and all that stuff that they can recycle. We have a community garden. So we in the past have asked families to grow seedlings at home. and then bring them in and help us plant them in the community garden. And that's a great connection again, between growing things at home and then contributing to, the greater good and serving people in need here in our parish family. And that has been a really fun thing. And then we'll have the children go out too during the spring and the summer and the fall even and help harvest things, which is just, again, something they love. So these are some things, that are working here. But again, that really hopefully help families make that connection between what they're learning here and how they can put it into practice in their homes. So this is my last slide, but there are some resources here, and I know John also put them up on the website. Just some good links to good websites with, with great ideas and resources that you can easily use and share with your families. So I hope that those are helpful. And I think we're at 2:45, so I probably talked too long. But I believe that we're going to try to put you into small groups, if I'm not mistaken, and give you guys time to just talk. Think you're muted, John. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. We're going to do that in 1 minute. As soon as I get these things set up, there we go. We're going to break out for about 10 minutes or so. And what I'd like you just to share is things that you heard and things that you see that are working. And as a group, kind of bring back a question. We're not going to get to all of them, obviously, because we're a large group. But what is a question that you had that surfaced in terms of thinking about family faith formation at church or at home? So either one is fine. So give me a second here.
A lot of things in the chat.
There's a lot of things in the chat. So hopefully we'll have about 10 minutes, and we'll have breakout groups of approximately 6 people. And we're going to open up the rooms.
You want me to go into a room, John?
No.
No. Okay. It's a lot of people.
I had to do some quick math to get everybody into a room.
Yeah, I'm not good at that.
Well, I wanted groups of about 6, so there's about 180 something people. So
wow.
And I'm going to